Hello, 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 hello. We are back for another discussion that has to do with holistic healing over 50. We have our guest who has been on here before, Sharon D. Brown, and she is going to talk about what she saw on the internet this week. This is our new series. What did we see in health this week? And Sharon has some amazing things she wants to share with you that she saw Halle Berry talk about. Now, I'm going to let Sharon introduce herself and then we will get started.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Sharon D. Brown, and I'm the founder of Self Care U Academy. And with Self Care U Academy is for entrepreneurs and leaders so that you can safeguard your sanity as well as supercharge your self care so you can thrive without losing yourself. And so, yes, I will be sharing what I learned on the internet.
On the internet.
Yeah, and so actually it was probably about 2 weeks ago when I was on YouTube and Halle Berry and Trevor Noah video popped up, and Halle Berry has been on different arena, or shall I say different platforms, talking about her experience with menopause. And for those of us who are 50 or above, some individuals are already in that stage or have passed that stage. But
Mhm.
one of the things that she has this movement now, pretty much where she really wants for women to talk about, because which is true. I mean, she said a lot of different things, but one, generally it's not talked about. Women don't talk about it, and then mothers and grandmothers don't generally talk about it as a whole. So what that does is we don't know what we're experiencing when that time comes.
Mm.
And I know for me, the only thing I've always heard, the hot flashes and the night sweats, and maybe some mood change. Those are the only three things that I heard. But she was talking about an experience that she had. And it was pretty much where, she had met this wonderful guy, they had wonderful sex, but then the next day, when she went to go and use the bathroom, she said it was so painful. It was painful. She said it took her like 10 minutes to urinate. She didn't know what was going on with her. So she told her guy friend, hey, I'm going to have to go to the doctor because I don't know what this is. I don't know what happened. So she did.
Mhm.
And the doctor was like, oh, I know what this is. But anyway, he misdiagnosed her,
He
but
misdiagnosed her. Wow.
yeah. Yeah. And even what he had originally diagnosed her with, it wasn't even related to menopause at all. But she ended up getting, the test back. The doctor's like, I don't know what this is. And then with research and everything, then she discovered that it was related to perimenopausal. So with this particular thing, and let me just kind of back up, like with perimenopause, is that period before menopause. So it's the
Mhm.
transition into, just in case, other people listening, and even for men, so that men can help support the women in their lives as well,
No, yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm gonna pause you just right there that you mentioned that because people get a little bit confused. So there's perimenopause, which is the time before, which in my case, I think that will lasted about a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's actual menopause. Menopause means that you went one whole year without
Mm-hmm.
having your cycle. And then when you get to the end of that 1 year, you have gone through menopause. And then postmenopausal is obviously after you've gone through that whole year and your life afterwards. So, because, sometimes people just say menopause and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a blanket for everything. And they even say menopause like it just goes on forever. No, there's postmenopausal that happens after that 1 year. So I just wanted to insert that. But go ahead. Let's hear the rest of the story.
Oh no, I really appreciate that because that's really important too. And then along with that, when it comes to the age, only thing I can say, it really differs for each person, each woman.
Mhm.
And so But basically, with Holly, what she was saying is that she got misdiagnosed. She did her research and then discovered that, she was in perimenopause. And then she's looking at her doctors like, hey, how come no one never talked to me about? But
Right.
the other thing that she learned too, generally doctors are not educated about perimenopause. Now, I haven't looked this up myself, but according to her research, she says that there's 13% of doctors who are educated and know the menopausal body. And then with doctors, they only have one chapter in school regarding menopause.
Well, here's the sad thing about that, right? Most of the research on any given ailment, disease, illness, whatever, small symptom is devoted to white men.
Yeah.
And women are way, way, way down the line. You know what I mean? It's mostly to serve white men and men, and women are somewhere down there. And it's just like not a lot of research devoted to women's. And that's one of the reasons why I have been in a study called Black Women's Health Study for over 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Because, are you in that study?
Mm-mm. I never heard of it till you just said it.
I'm going to have to refer you to it because, and I'm going to put it in the description. I joined it about 30 years ago and I referred all my family and friends, and they follow us and ask questions and check up on us. And we turn in a questionnaire every year. And just they do a lot of research about Black women's health. And I think, and so I keep up with it and I continue to do it because if we don't, it's not enough research about us. And then we have situations like what happened to Halle Berry. But go ahead.
Yeah. And also along with that, with Holly, she has a movement. I can't remember the exact name of, let's
Mhm.
just say, her foundation. But she has a movement where that's one of the goals, so that there can be more research. Because, like she said, there's not enough research, and so she really couldn't get mad with her doctor. But once she
You
did
know,
the
I'm gonna
research,
I'm gonna pause and say one more thing, and then I'm gonna let you get back to your story. So I work in senior health, and I went to the Alzheimer's conference, and I've been to little seminars and things about us with the Alzheimer's Association. And every time when they present the statistics, they consistently say that Alzheimer's and dementia affects African Americans more than white Americans, and also Hispanic Americans more than white Americans. But a big problem is that when they do all their studies, because they do a lot of studies, they can also consistently say that they have no Black people to do the research on, that they're not getting enough Black participants in the studies. So it's like mind-boggling to me. You read out these statistics that say that it affects African Americans more, but then you don't have enough participants, and like it feels like to me you would devote a huge chunk of your research um into figuring out why. But I guess it goes into what society values, who society values. But anyway, I'm going to let you finish your story. I'm going to let you finish your story.
No, no, but also, just to pretty much kind of talk about that too, just when you said that, to me, what came to my mind is twofold. One, what you had just said is like, how much are they really going out to try and find, African American women? But then also on the other side of it is historically what has happened to, Black women, even, like when it comes to the medical field, like even when it comes to the pap smear, how that was, you know, I don't even want to say created. Well, how to say created wasn't discovered. So I can kind of see both
How was it
sides of it.
how was it created?
From my understanding, it was where a white man pretty much, I'm gonna say from my view, was
Mhm.
torturing Black women,
Mm.
with this, with these things. It's like, oh, well, let me see how this works, and then can go off and say, oh yeah, I invented this, but
Mm.
they were under a lot of physical pain and
Mm.
things like that. So,
Right, and that I think
you
that's probably things like that are the reason why we have informed consent these days to know what you're
know,
going to be going through, because there's
mhm,
just been too many studies and experiments done on um, who society considers the lesser, and
mhm,
without them knowing exactly what they're consenting to. So I think that's why we now have what's called informed consent, because of so many years, such a history of things like that. I'm going to research what Sharon just said and put that uh, the citation inside of the description so that you can read more about it if you want to know more about it.
yeah, yeah. And so with Holly, she did, started getting some answers, and pretty much like when it came to that pain,
Hmm.
that she had after sex, and where she had problems of going to, or shall I say, or urinating, it's called vaginal atrophy.
Mm.
And pretty much with that, that can be caused by um with menopause, and that's
Hmm.
because with menopause, or the beginning of it, you have a decrease of estrogen. And so
Hmm.
with that, all kind of different things, but that's one of the things. But one of the reasons that this had resonated or hit me so when she was telling her journey, because I was kind of like her. Oh, I just skipped over,
Hmm.
perimenopause. I might have had one doctor in the past and say, oh, you may be going through this. But
Right.
I felt like I really didn't have any symptoms, maybe some
Hmm.
night sweats,
Hmm.
and I was, when I think about it, I was in my either early 40s or in my late 30s at that particular time. But
Mm-hmm.
with the vaginal atrophy, I definitely experienced that. Like whether or not if it came from menopause or not, but I definitely had that. And
So
so
tell
I
me,
really
what's the definition of vaginal atrophy?
Yeah, so with vaginal atrophy, it's pretty much like with the inner walls of of a woman's vagina, the wall is thinning. And so
Mm.
sometimes during sex or after sex, literally the walls can crack. So with the penetration, it can
Mm.
crack the wall. So that's what she and I was feeling, because I did
Mhm.
experience that, like after, sex, is that it's like, oh, because I just, to be honest, at the time when I was in a committed relationship, I just
Mhm.
thought, that my guy is like, oh, he's just pumping too hard, I'm
Mhm.
saying,
Mhm.
thrusting too hard.
Mhm.
But no, that's not,
Mm.
what it was. And like I said, for me, because I can't even remember. There was another diagnosis that was attached to that, because it wasn't
Mhm.
called vaginal atrophy. Because even when Holly has said it, I had to look it
Mhm.
up myself, but I definitely experienced that. But like I said, there is another diagnosis. I just
Mhm.
can't remember the name of it.
So what are the solutions to such a thing?
Yeah. So with that, like for me,
Mhm.
when I experienced it, the doctor was like, well, you can not have sex, so that's one solution
Okay.
to it. Or they can give you some an ointment that you can put on,
Mhm.
like after. But again, with the ointment, that's you know external, but
Mhm.
also to look at different diet. Making sure that you're lubricated and things like that. And one thing that I will say, one of the solution is to learn is and this is what I always say self-care is all about, is to
Mhm.
learn more about yourself. And so as
Mhm.
women, because I didn't even think about it, because again, people don't talk about it, because she even talked about her mother. didn't talk about it, her grandmothers, but they didn't have the language because no one talked about it.
Now, here's an interesting thing about this. um, because you just told me that you were going to talk about this subject, and we're just kind of running with it. And so I had to go back. I went through menopause at around 47, and I'm 55 now. So I had to go back in my mind to that
Mm-hmm.
time. And one thing that um I did read about the thinning of the walls, and that you needed to stay lubricated and that kind of thing to keep, because it's just naturally, right? Use your own lubrication to keep it nice
Mm-hmm.
and supple and things like that. So what I was doing at that time, and it was kind of a natural, innate response to what was happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would read so many erotic billionaire romance novels,
Mm-hmm.
like just running through them, just reading, right? And it helped with the lubrication, right? Because you're there, you get turned on reading these things. Because at the same time that men and that women are going through menopause, men are kind of going through a little bit of a menopause as well. So they're not even, if they're around the same age as you, they're not necessarily wanting sex as much uh as we did in our 30s. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So then that means the opportunities for the lubrication might not be daily or a couple times a week or that kind of thing, because you kind of slow down. You're doing other things, both sides are kind of doing different things. So I think my answer to that was erotic novels.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
like
what I
that
did.
answer.
Yeah, so and so
Yeah.
I didn't experience um that, like when I started reading about that it was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I might have,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I experienced it once or something like that, a little something, and I just started reading those novels. And then here's the kicker, Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
This is Now my grandmother has passed on, so I'm going to go ahead and say this. When she was in her 50s, I used to see erotic novels in her bed all the time. She slept different from her partner. That her partner he had his room, she had her room, but
Mm-hmm.
she had a lot of erotic novels too. And I was like, does she, some wisdom there. So I don't know. It just got kind of passed on. So
Yeah.
that was a very, very personal detail, but it is what it is. And the funny thing is, I went to a conference in New York, and I sat down and I talked to a lady, and we started talking about those kinds of novels that we read, and we were passing each other uh different ones. Did you read this one? Did you read that one? So so ladies, there's a whole world out here. And maybe if I take the time, I will make an Amazon list and put it in the description. I'm going to try to do that. Make an Amazon list, put it in the description if you're interested in these kinds of novels. I got to try to jog my memory because I haven't read that many of them. Like every once in a while, I'll pick something up, but like the way that I was doing it at that time. And I think it lasted for about 4 years, just, you
Yeah.
know, but so if I can remember some of the novels that I read, I'll put a list in Amazon's for you to read them, because maybe it's helpful.
I'm pretty sure it is, and I really like it because when you're sitting, I mean, by you saying that, and I'm sitting here like, wow, that didn't even cross my mind at that time. Because well, one at that time I wasn't into all of the self care, not at from this perspective. And so with the novels, the way I look at it, that's you're feeding your mind, and so
Hmm.
you're allowing yourself to create a natural lubricant. You
Naturally,
know?
yeah. Because here's the thing. Because sometimes, over the course of years in my relationship, we might have watched a little porn or something like that on the internet.
Mhm,
But because I'm such a strong advocate for women, my mind would
mhm,
always say, "Well, what is it? Like what's her story?" I
mhm,
couldn't,
yeah,
I couldn't
mhm,
focus because I was like, "What is her story? Has she been abused? What would make her want to do
mm,
this?" You know what I mean? What would make it just my mind would just go right, and so then I couldn't 100% participate without feeling really guilty, but not guilty because of watching it, but guilty because of wondering about her story. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
just for her and
Mhm.
participating, feeling like maybe I'm participating in her abuse or something like this is, and then, this is all my mind. I don't know. Maybe they're not abused at all, but this is where my mind would go. So
Mhm.
the books for me were so much better, and a
Yeah.
lot of them. One author that I really loved, I read all of her books, and I think we're talking 70 maybe. Theodora Taylor, my
Okay.
favorite, my favorite
Okay.
author. If I don't put the list in there, I'm definitely going to put Theodora Taylor in there for people to visit her, especially if you're a Black woman. So she really does an amazing job of celebrating everything about a Black woman, her curls, her curves, her this, her rhythm, all these wonderful things. The only thing, and it's this not a bad thing, it's just a FYI, her stories are all interracial. So, but they're paranormal, they're all these, I mean, it's just wild stories. I love her books. It would just like really get my mind going. So Theodora Taylor is one that I would recommend. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm only saying anything
Yeah.
about the interracial thing because if that bothers somebody, it didn't bother me, especially because how she celebrated us and made us feel so beautiful and empowered and strong and desirable. And sometimes when men are writing these stories,
Mhm.
they do it from their gaze. And most of the
Yeah, yeah.
stories that I would read were written by women, which was amazing. So you get to, it resonates.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And we need that too. We need that. So
Mhm.
I really love that. And so again, that is, another way that someone can help with that. And I'm not an expert at all because I
Mhm.
was just going through it,
Mhm.
And but I just really wanted to bring that on the forefront because it's something we don't talk about. It's something that gets um overlook,
Mhm.
and one thing that I do know, like,
Mhm.
even though I didn't have any shame about it, because I did talk
Mhm.
to one of my girlfriend, and it
Mhm.
helped her because, I was giving her some information about it, and
Mhm.
then, she was able to share that information, like, with one of her friends. So that's
Mhm.
another reason why it's so important for us to talk openly about it
Yes.
because
Now let
whether
me
we are
mhm.
seeking
Go ahead.
information or given information.
Mhm. Let me ask you, is that also related to incontinence?
I don't know. I want to
Because I
say
didn't. I mean, because
that
when you say the word atrophy, right? Atrophy
mhm,
just makes me think about muscles that haven't
it
been
is.
used and they get kind of floppy and they can't hold
Mhm,
themselves, right? That's what I think
mhm,
about when I hear atrophy. So if we call it
mhm.
vaginal atrophy, it makes me think. Now it sounds like this is related to estrogen and collagen and things that make your skin also kind of
It is.
floppy and
It
things,
is.
right? But I definitely can speak to incontinence. So
Okay.
I don't have that. Like that went away, maybe because of weightlifting or something, or
Mhm,
with it Kegels or something. I don't really know. But back then, in the when I was in my late 40s, when I was going through when had just gone through menopause or trying to go through perimenopause, all of that, I definitely couldn't laugh, cough, without you having to put on new panties, just pee.
mhm.
so, so I don't know
Yeah.
when that went away, but it did. And I guess that's
Mhm.
probably something that should give women hope as well, because I think it's also a misconception that your perimenopausal symptoms and your menopausal symptoms are going to continue during postmenopause. But somehow I think
Mhm.
you gain an equilibrium or something happens, um,
Yeah.
that it gets
E
better. Now you do need to, because you're just older, right? You need to lift weights, which we talked about, to keep your whole muscles from atrophy. And you need to, take care of your skin and stay out of the sun and use SPF, and there's just definitely things you have to do just because you're aging. But a lot of those I find, and you let me know because maybe it's different for you, those kind of menopausal, perimenopausal symptoms have kind of dissipated. I didn't have that many hot flashes. I had a stressful time in my life. It was about 2 weeks, and I had hot flashes for about 2 weeks. My mom came to assist me. She told me to stop drinking caffeine, and the hot flashes went away. And also my stressful situation went away. Now, also see this here, I'm a juicer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really juicing like every day during perimenopause and menopause. And so it was kind of smooth sailing, but there, I did have the incontinence and, and then, oh, frozen shoulder, which now here's the thing. I
Tell me
watched the Best
more.
Man movie 3, was it 4? How many have they done? 4, 3, 4? I
Three
don't
or
know.
four. Yeah.
And in that movie, they were talking about some of the menopausal symptoms, perimenopausal, menopausal symptoms. And one of them was frozen shoulder. And I had
Wow.
frozen shoulder. And I was like, what?
Mm.
How? Who? What?
Interesting. I've never
My
heard of
mind was
that.
blown. My mind was blown when I saw that in the movie. I was like, oh my God, I never attributed it to anything like menopause. I sleep on a memory foam. I thought that was it. I had all these other reasons why, and I had not connected it. I didn't even know. No one told me that it was about menopause.
Wow, that's a new one for me as well. Because I experienced frozen shoulder too, but that was
Mhm.
like years later. But who's to know was it connected? Because I always thought that frozen shoulder was, mainly kind of stress,
Yeah,
and maybe you're not moving as much and things like that. So I'm pretty
somehow it's
sure there's
related to menopause. Maybe collagen in the shoulder. I don't know. We need to
yeah,
research that. We need to talk. We
yeah,
need to get a
yeah.
doctor to talk about that, or a nurse. We need to get Latora to help us to talk about that because yeah, when I saw that on Best Man 4 or 3, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
totally shocked.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a new one. I would not have related. And so again, this is why this conversation is so important.
Mm-hmm.
One, because we all have different experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
then two, not only the experiences in and of itself, but we have different ways of how we've gotten better. And, for some individuals,
Mm-hmm.
one thing I will say is to do something, because I really feel like, and at least the message that I got, oh, this
Mm-hmm.
is just something that women go through and you just have to endure it. Some of it you may, but also, especially by me being in self care and all of that, I'm all about, researching, looking up information and implementing something. And it's about testing to see what works for you,
And I think
but
that I think that when women go through pregnancy, they go through their cycle, they do something. They have all kinds
mhm,
of things that they do. There's all
mhm,
kinds of research about that. There's all kinds of books. There's all kinds of things to help us with that. We would never do nothing. We would never feel
mhm,
like we need to suffer through. We have all these uh, old wives' tales, or they call them, or whatever, all these solutions and all kinds of things, doctor things that we try to alleviate any of the stress that goes with that or any of the discomfort that goes with that. But it's sort of like, I don't know, maybe the way we put old women away, like it's just
mhm.
like, and then it's up to onus is on us to not put
Yeah.
ourselves away and to take care of ourselves and to say we matter and we're still here and we're still valuable
Mhm,
and we don't have to suffer and we don't have to ignore it, and even
mhm,
if there are not enough research on us, enough books written about it and all of that, the onus is on us to share the word and spread the word and talk about it and be more open and come up with our own solutions, and like you say, according to your own personal journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And then the other thing I want to kind of mention too is the impact that that can have on relationship as well. You
Mm.
know, because I know you
Hmm.
said like with you when you were like when it first happened, like your partner you know, was probably going through their thing and how some men can be going through, but that's not always the case. You know what I'm saying? So just meaning that sometimes, you know, your partner could be just as sexually active,
Hmm.
or more or whatever that is. And like for the men is to truly understand, you know, where women are coming from. And when we say that, you know, it's painful because sometimes they may not always be doing sex, but
Hmm.
definitely after sex, and it may not be each and every time. And so I just really
Hmm.
wanted to bring that up because sometimes some men really don't understand. They think that, oh, you know, it won't be that painful. No, no,
Hmm.
no, no. That's not what that is, you know?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so to be able to really support, you know, your partner when it's not just menopause, you know, not to treat it as if, you know, it is, but
Hmm.
definitely once someone had experienced atrophy is to support that person. And there's
Hmm.
other things that kind of go along the way. And one thing that came to my mind, I don't even know how I forgot this because you were asking like how can you treat it? Because remember I told you that with mine
Hmm.
when I got diagnosed with it, they didn't diagnose it with perimenopausal, but I do think it may have started with that. But there,
Hmm.
and I can't, there's a certain name, but let's just say, um, sometimes for some individuals, can have like painful sex. Like that
Hmm.
hadn't always been the case, but
Hmm.
sometimes it was. And
Hmm.
so in saying that, like I said, there's a certain name, but I was referred to see a physical therapist. So
Hmm.
there are physical therapists out there who specialize like in vaginal atrophy and again, I can't remember the name of that other thing that's related to, let's just
Hmm.
say, sexual pain. So I want women to know that too. And you have to look for and you have to ask. Some OBGYN may know,
Hmm.
um, some sex therapists may know, but
Hmm.
you know, if you go on the internet and you look for a physical therapist, you have to put in, you know, probably vaginal atrophy to see if they specialize in it, because not everyone does. But it is
Interesting.
something, yeah, it is, again, it's another type of treatment to help
Hmm.
with.
I love it. And then do you hear about these vaginal rejuvenation centers and stuff? You think that's part of it?
I don't know. I haven't looked into it, so I can't really say much about it. But I will
Hmm.
hope so. You know, it's
Hmm.
like sometimes some things you may hear, you're like, oh, well, why they're doing that? But
Hmm. Hmm.
to be honest, now that we're talking about this, it's like I can see why people would want, you know, I say there's different reasons. It may not be what people think. I'll say that much. It may not
Hmm.
be what people think. Because if anything, you want to be in, put it like this, if you never experience it, you would never know, you would never understand. But if
Right.
you experience it, like burning sensation when you urinate, again,
Hmm.
it's like stick pins, you know,
Right.
down there. I mean, it can be very painful. So I can see, you know, again, looking for different type of treatment because even Holly, I don't remember the name of the medication, but it's a some type of hormonal replacement. You know, some people are on that, and some people do okay. You know, with hormonal replacements, and some don't. It had never been discussed with me, so that's why I thought that I pretty much have really bypassed perimenopausal. But after hearing what Holly was talking about, I said, "Ooh, I think I started probably much earlier
Hmm.
than I just say at an early age, and didn't even realize at the time that I was even going through it."
Right. For me, I feel like the hormone replacement therapy is trying to stop what nature has made so.
Mm, mhm,
So, I mean, this is, and that's just me. No one has
mhm,
to agree with me, but I feel like if it's now time for you not to have estrogen,
mhm,
there is power in that. There's a reason for that. And again, my that's my bias, my thoughts is that why go back and then try to replace what is time when it's time to be something. But
mhm.
that, I didn't suffer that much with
Yeah,
menopause. So,
yeah.
and obviously I suffered more than I didn't even know because of the frozen shoulder, but overall I don't think I suffered as much as some people have suffered. So, don't just because I feel like that doesn't mean everybody needs to do what I, agree with me. Um but one time I remember when I was going through menopause, um and I saw this article that talked about how the estrogen, when you don't have the estrogen, it makes you start not being as um nurturing to other
Mm,
people as you had been.
mhm,
So how you were worried about this and that and doing all these things for all these people. When you're young, you need that because you're raising kids and you need all of those things. But when you start going through menopause, that gets kind of pulled away, and so that where you would be nurturing to other people, then you become worried about your own mission, your purpose, nurturing
mhm,
yourself and what you're here to do from here on out. And so that's why you start to see such older women, women over 50, starting to start businesses and being creative and doing things that they hadn't had time to do, and doing all these amazing things because that desire to nurture everyone else and make sure everybody else is okay and overly caring about everybody else has been pulled away. And so then all you have is yourself and your mission. And I think that there's purpose in that, and there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why nature has made it that way. So
mhm,
that's part of the reason why I feel like hormone replacement therapy is not for me,
mhm.
because I would just want to, do what nature intended and make the best out of it. Lean into it.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that too,
Hmm.
and then even when you were talking, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because we kind of call it the next chapter in a person's life. We may
Hmm.
look at it as being natural, but then I guess you could say it is natural if
Hmm.
some of it is because, like, for most individuals, depending on when they had their kids, they may have their kids may be grown and they may have grandkids, and so they don't have to be as, I guess you say, onto others, serving others as much. And
Hmm.
there's a sense of that self. And of course, but like by both of us being, into this arena in educating, women and individuals about their health, the main thing is really is for us at every stage of our lives, regardless of where we are,
Hmm.
whether we're young individuals, in their 50s or even older than that, is to be able to focus on self and still to be able to care. Because sometimes there's a sense of loss in
Hmm.
ourselves when
Hmm.
we're not able to do. I mean, on the, I guess you could say on the scale of things, everything, for the most part turns out okay.
Hmm.
But so much better when we have that insight of pouring into ourselves and serving ourselves because we have that different perspective, you
Hmm.
know?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and then we can prevent a lot of the, like some of the, not all of it, but some of the medical stuff that may end up going on, like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes,
Hmm.
and
Hmm. Hmm.
heart attacks, and even strokes, and and even like dementia. Maybe
Yeah.
some of those things can be prevented if we can, one, by us having this conversation, so that women can start having conversation with the younger generation as well, to at least be
Mm.
alert and to start, taking steps and doing something. And for any men, who are watching this and trying to get a better understanding of the women in their lives, not just, their spouse or their partner, but also
Mhm.
it can be their own mother or it can be their daughter. Because
Mhm.
it's good for men to have, a really good understanding of what a female may be going through, and then to have those conversations, because not too long ago I was just talking about, in relationships, it's like what
Mhm.
kind of discussions to have with your partner just in general, because sometimes we can be testing, and so therefore if we're having certain conversations and if a person doesn't want to hear about something or doesn't seem to have compassion regarding certain things, because we talk about, like, oh, getting married and
Mhm.
having kids and career wise, or really medically, just what the body naturally goes through, who, like, for each partner, male and female, can you really be there to support the person? I think people can do okay. I kind of call it the physical part of it, of taking
Mhm.
care of
Mhm.
someone, but
Mhm.
emotionally of what they go through,
Right.
are you,
Right.
and
Right.
especially when it comes to intimacy.
Yeah. We need to have more conversations about this. For now, we're going to end this one. I want to thank you for coming.
Mhm.
And for those, this is Sharon D. Brown. Okay. She's coming to us to talk to us about menopause, perimenopause, and vaginal atrophy. That's what we talked about today. If you want to find Sharon, you can find her on Instagram at I am Sharon D. Brown. And then if you want to see her YouTube, and I'll put the descriptions of these things in, I'll put these in the description as well. YouTube and Facebook, Sharon D. Brown, self-care entrepreneur. Self-carepreneur. So again, like I said, I'll put the links for these inside of the description, and all the things that we've talked about here today, I'm going to do my best to put them all inside of the description so that you can be a part of this conversation. And if you see this video and you want to add to it, please inbox me. You can catch me. I'm Reverend Dr. Brooke Brimm, and you can catch me on, you can inbox me here on this channel or put it in a comment, or you can catch me all over the internet at Brooke Brimm. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today. And this has been a great conversation, and we just need to have more open things, uh, just so that we can be more free and live our best lives over 50. This is all about holistic health over 50. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.